Aloha, my name is Kevin Witten. I'm the editor of Green Magazine Hawaii and Pacific Edge Magazine. We are really honored to have all of these panelists up here today joining us and sharing what they know, what they've been doing, and more importantly, about social entrepreneurism. So thanks so much for coming out, and we'd like to also thank our moderator, Stuart Coleman, author and Hawaii coordinator of the Surfrider Foundation. And a couple of housekeeping things. If you have not already registered to attend the networking portion of the event and you would like to, you can check in at the tables that are located at the Village Green by the Crystal Chapel. Good luck finding that. And yeah, and you can register with the ladies after the event here. And if you did not get your ticket validated for parking, there's a ticket machine outside. You could do that after the panel as well. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our panel sponsor, Ocean Head Solar and Electric. Hopefully you had a chance to meet Gail and Shelley. Gail, if you'd like to say a few words, thanks.
Hi, I'm Gail Slauson-Ike, and I am here with my partner, Shelley Ike, and we are a women-owned renewable energy solution provider. We go into people's homes and save them a ton of money on their electric bill. Primarily, we install solar, PV solar systems for people, but we also give them lots and lots of tips on how to just reduce their general consumption as well. And I have some interesting statistics on solar in Hawaii and our consumption of fossil fuels. One thing that I found really interesting is that right now, over 90% of Hawaii's electricity comes from burning imported fossil fuels. And that's really expensive for all of us, and it's really dirty too, and we do all pay the price of that. But there is some good news. In 2008, there were about 400 solar PV installs, and now, as of last year, there were 40,000 PV installations in Hawaii. And those 40,000 residents here in Hawaii are saving us approximately 700,000 barrels of oil each year. So that's 700,000 less junk going into our atmosphere and using up our fossil fuels. So I think that's something that we could all be really proud about. When I talk to a lot of people here, they said, oh yeah, I already have PV. So I think, yes, we should applaud ourselves for that, that we are making a difference. And if you don't have PV yet, now you know who to come and see. There are lots of different ways to save on energy, and if you don't have a house and you're in a condo, there are ways to reduce your consumption, and one of them is to use a solar cell phone charger, and I just happen to be giving one away, so drop your business card in my box outside to enter to win a solar cell phone charger. And again, I'm Gail, Ocean Head Solar and Electric, and it's a pleasure to have been invited here by Green Magazine, and pleasure to be in front of all these fantastic energy and business people here in Hawaii. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Gail, and welcome to all of you who made your way through the maze of the complex. It was a bit of a challenge to get here, but that is why we have you here, because it was an intelligence test as well, and you've all passed. But we ask you not to make fun of the latecomers who will be staggering in as we speak. So my name is Stuart Coleman, and I am the Hawaii coordinator of the Surfrider Foundation. And it's an honor to be up here. I was privileged to write the cover story for this issue's Pacific Edge magazine about a topic that is very near and dear to me, about social entrepreneurship and B Corps and this new kind of emergent way of doing business. Before we begin, just to get a sense of our audience and how deep we should go, how many of you know what social entrepreneurship is? Okay, generally. How many of you know about B Corps? Okay, good. Like I said, we have an intelligent audience here today.
No, just everybody read your article, Stuart.
I'd like to think that's the case. We are going to talk about the triple bottom line, and we have an amazing panel of people here to talk about that issue because these are leaders in their field, in the field of sustainability. Now, sustainability is a word that has been said that, like Helen of Troy, has launched 1,000 conferences, and people are still not exactly sure what it is. It's a catch-all for everything. So we hope to kind of bear down on that and give more specific examples during this talk today about what that looks like and how it's being manifested in Hawaii. So we are going to go through our panel. I'm going to let them give their own kind of brief introductions, and we'll start with brains and beauty before the rest of you guys. We can start over here.
Okay, thanks, Stuart, and thanks so much for inviting me here today. I also just want to thank Pacific Edge Magazine and Green Magazine. You guys have done, I think, a really amazing job and kind of a groundbreaking job profiling a lot of different things that are going on here. So I really appreciate the work that you guys have done. I know you work really hard. My name is Dawn Lippert. I'm the director of the Energy Accelerator. Have any of you heard of the Energy Accelerator before? Okay, it's about half. So we're a startup program based in Hawaii. We're an accelerator, so really helping move companies from technology in the lab out into the marketplace. That's our focus. And our focus is mainly on energy technologies and water technologies. We fund about 14 to 15 companies a year, and we have companies that are more early stage and also companies that are later stage. We fund companies, the earlier stage companies about $75,000 each, and the later stage companies about $1 million. But what's really unique about what we do is we're funding companies that solve energy problems here. So I can talk sort of more about what that means, but we're very engaged in the policy framework and Hawaii's energy system and the challenges that we face. And we're very focused on bringing in solutions to help make the grid a friendlier place for renewables, to help bring in clean transportation technologies, better water technologies, other things that can make the energy system work better here, lower energy costs eventually for residents as well. So that's really what we're focused on, and I'll talk more about that as we go.
Thank you.
Aloha. My name is Shauna Trivena, and in addition to thanking everyone who's been thanked, I wanted to thank everyone who's found their way down here today. These conversations are really important, and it was just a year ago I asked who knew what B Corp was, and no one in the audience of this type of demographic raised their hand, so something's happening, and I'm really appreciative that people are taking the time to come and participate. I have a sustainability consulting firm that's the intersection of education and sustainability. We teach building occupants to do energy, waste, and water audits so that they find millions in no cost savings, but also have a shift in their energy culture and consciousness and their behavior. I've also started leading a group of about 20 entrepreneurs to create what's called Impact Hub Honolulu. And there's 45 impact hubs around the globe in major cities, and they are co-working spaces that have programs and connecting to funders and community so that social entrepreneurs have a supportive, thriving network to really actualize what they're trying to do. And anyone that's in an impact hub joins a global network. So I'll be speaking about that a little bit today as well. And I'm also doing a dissertation on B Corp. So I'm really excited to share some of the things I found in the conversation today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kainoa Casco. Just again wanted to thank Green Magazine and Pacific Edge and Stuart and everyone here for being involved in these types of conversations. One of the biggest things in Hawaii is building awareness around what's going on on the business side of sustainability. So I'm the Chief Responsibility Officer for Susty Pacific. We do consulting on corporate responsibility and sustainability. So any organization or company that wants to make the transition and take all these values of sustainability and social entrepreneurship and integrate that into their planning, reporting, operations, whatever it is, we help them make that transition and taking best practices from what's happening around the world and the rest of the mainland, and helping Hawaii companies develop their business case for sustainability and corporate responsibility.
My name is Scott Cooney. I'm founder of a company called Pono Home. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But basically, I've been a sustainability educator for many years, and I teach the MBA course on sustainability up at the University of Hawaii. And a couple of years ago, I started a media company, online media company, trying to basically get sustainability education to be online, very accessible in many different ways. The company has grown. It's really nice. We had a record in December. We had 5.5 million readers online, and it presented many opportunities. And I've kind of followed a few of those. We actually developed a solar lead generator as part of our company, and then Pono Home was born also underneath this media company in order to bring that sustainability education directly into the home. So we do energy and water efficiency in people's homes, and we were lucky enough to get selected by the Energy Accelerator as part of their seed stage cohort this year. So I'm very grateful. In addition to everybody else that's been thanked, I would also like to thank the Energy Accelerator for that. So, so very honored to be here, and look forward to having the conversation with you guys.
Hi, I'm Alan Hornstein. I'm the owner of Lennox Metals. We are a metals recycling firm, recycling commercial industrial metals throughout the state, Pacific Rim, here in Hawaii. We've been at this for just about 27 years this year. So it has seemed to me, when we talk about social entrepreneurship, which we'll get into a bit later, I've been doing this since 1988, and neither green or social entrepreneurship were terms we knew of, but I guess I'd started quite early in that. We are involved with public utilities, military bases, construction companies. We move about 30 to 50 million pounds of recycled scrap into a recycled chain, diverted from the landfills here, or the landfill, I should say, and are doing our best to stay pollution-free and generate new business. We're very involved in lots of demolition work going on throughout the state at this time, hotels, sewer treatment plants, things of that nature. But I just wanted to thank Pacific Edge for inviting me here today and to talk with this panel.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ari Pates, and I just go with ditto. It's hard to go last after everyone's thanking everybody. Maybe I'll thank my mother. So I'm the owner of a company called Styrophobia, which is a locally owned and operated manifestation of another company, which is world-centric. Styrophobia is in the process of turning into a non-for-profit organization, and the company that I now work for, oddly enough, started out as a nonprofit and then transitioned to be a B Corp, and now I'm the regional manager for World-Centric, which is a manufacturer of certified compostable food service items. And then I'd also like to shamelessly promote or represent Seeks, which is an interesting take on social entrepreneurship, which is a local new charter school. And yeah, that's what I got for you.
Yes, and his wife happens to be the founder, but that's neither here nor there. And the interesting thing today is regarding his company is that the city council just announced that they will be putting forth a bill to ban styrofoam products, single-use styrofoam products, which are the most kind of toxic and least recycled plastics known to humans. And so keep your eyes and ears on that because that will be a big development. Hawaii's already kind of led the way in terms of being the first state to ban single-use plastic bags, and to ban smoking on our beaches, and we're going to make progress in this field too. So let's jump into the debate here. We want to start with the idea of social entrepreneurship, which, like sustainability, is this all-encompassing term. And so I want to ask our panelists, and I've come up with nicknames for each of them that I'll try to sprinkle in during the conversation, usually embarrassing, that to kind of define what social entrepreneurship means to you and how you kind of have manifested that in your work and in your life. So we might start with the queen of clean energy, Dawn Lippert. Would you like to start?
I don't know how I ended up with that one. So I think there's two things of social entrepreneurship that I would think about. So one is a really personal view of it, which is that we at the Energy Accelerator are ourselves entrepreneurs, and I think have taken a really entrepreneurial approach toward understanding what is in the market for startup companies and developing a product, which is our program, that addresses a need in that market. So in that sense, there's a social entrepreneurship angle there. But then beyond that, I think the whole purpose of starting the Energy Accelerator is to help companies that are doing good things scale. So I think for me, what this means is that there are some companies that the more and more of what they do, the better and better the world gets. And there are other companies that the more and more of what they do, the worse the world gets. And so what we've tried to do is find companies to bet on that are in the former category. So the more and more clean energy we have, the better the world gets. And that doesn't necessarily hold true, like for the more and more shoes you sell or chairs you sell or other things like that, which I think get more complicated. So rather than sort of work on corporate social responsibility in those kinds of businesses, we've really focused on companies that almost by definition, scale means better world. And for us, that means the deployment of clean energy and ultimately environmental impact. And so our metrics are complicated because I think one of the things that we do at the Energy Accelerator and that not everyone does, we really think of the energy system as a system. So scale doesn't necessarily mean that you're replacing barrels of oil right away or that you're replacing gasoline right away on the road. It actually can mean enabling technologies that down the line improve your system so that you get to more clean energy. So we take a really holistic systems view of social entrepreneurship in that way. But ultimately we're looking for companies that the more and faster they grow, the better the world is. And then I'm going to step back for just a minute into the personal side of it, because I think what's really unique about us is that we're an accelerator that tries to solve problems. It's almost unique in the market. If you look out there, there's a couple of accelerators that are really well known that we've modeled our program off of, which are Techstars and Y Combinator. And what they try and do is pick unicorns, or sort of the most promising entrepreneurs and ideas and companies, out of an enormous group of companies. So that would be maybe one unicorn out of 100, right? That you're kind of looking at companies, but they don't care what problem they're solving. They just want them to solve a problem that's going to make money. We're really different. So we're actually trying to pick unicorns, but that are also solving problems that we see right here in Hawaii and the Asia Pacific. So we're really crashing, I think, two different models. One is a solutions-based, kind of like technology, looking for solutions. Oh, this inverter doesn't work anymore on our grid. We need a new inverter, like really kind of linear engineering thinking around solving a problem. And then we also are sort of bringing in this other side, which is how do you find unicorns and entrepreneurs who can solve that and scale it really fast. So that's what we're trying to do at the Accelerator. We sort of have two customers in that way. But that's how we've translated social entrepreneurship into our work.
And if we start hearing the term unicorns referring to unique businesses, we'll know who to turn to. I've never heard that, but I like it. It's catchy. Next, I think we'll defer to the king of recycling here, Alan, to talk about your impressions and experiences with social entrepreneurship.
I like that, Stuart. I appreciate that. Anointed by you. You know, years ago, when I sat down and did some business planning, and I'm a former utility manager myself, and who had left, resigned early from the utility field to become a recycler of the very business I grew up in as a young kid. And so I've never really left my roots, but I had an opportunity to go into this and do a startup. And so I come from a family of 1, inventors, 2, entrepreneurs, and 3, business startups. Some were successful, some were failures, so I had a chance to see it as a young kid from a distance. But recycling was something that I knew everyone needed. So to the extent that I could deliver this model, we were dealing with different types of, shall we say, designs, but short of having any manufacturing of anything, of any kind here in Hawaii. So I went back to my roots as a utility manager. We went to utilities, we went to military bases, agencies, and then construction companies, those being our biggest sectors of business each year. And so the model was to go out and solicit those companies and ask them what they needed. We decided to deliver customized recycling services for every single company we approached. We delivered it for free with the intent of receiving their business as a result. So this going on 27 years, we've obviously built up a handsome clientele of folks, but and people who generate scrap. So as this caught on, recycling caught on, we were then asked to be involved with issues of the landfill. Landfill is a very, very interesting place. I dream a night of actually digging up the landfill and recovering all this land space so we can refill it with what should be put in there, recycle the rest, dispose of what is potentially hazardous or bad materials so we can reuse that land. I'm very much into the concept of reuse, and I think that's the very place to do it. It's just a function of approaching people who have the will and the fortitude to do this type of project. We're very much involved in the recycling side, so we come from that arena. In my history, and as the business has grown, I think about how to fill societal needs for recycling day to day. So we have brought in folks who are involved in the, shall we say, more of the environmental side, because as the years have gone by, our business has become a very regulated business. We spend lots of time and lots of money on environmental compliance. It's very important to be compliant, especially in a small, fragile environment like Hawaii. So I think we've done that pretty successfully. Our desire is to grow and double in size in the future years, and to take on issues of the landfill, if it's possible. Mm-hmm. And we get green lights to go in different directions and do that. We're ready to jump into that kind of a framework.
All right, thank you. And as to kind of close this question out and this idea, I'm going to turn to Scott, who is a serial entrepreneur and has started numerous businesses in the last 10 years. Kind of give us, what is your sense, overall picture of social entrepreneurship as opposed to other ways of doing business?
Sure. So historically, I think the sense of social entrepreneurship started off as a way to make money for nonprofits. It's if you think about it, for a nonprofit, if they can create a business model that somehow supports what they're doing, they don't need to go out and get grants and that sort of thing. As the marketplace has changed, as economics have changed, it's becoming more and more profitable to be green and just form a corporation and do that. So it's kind of, it blended over from starting off as a nonprofit to now you just basically have a company that is like an S Corp or a C Corp or something like that, or a B Corp. And then you basically make sustainability your market. And there is a growing market for that. It's organic foods, it's green building, it's renewable energies, whatever it is. Those things are becoming more and more prevalent. So I think that's kind of where it came from, and that's where it's going.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when I used to teach at the East-West Center, had students from all over Asia-Pacific, and they would talk about, for them, social entrepreneurship was using business as a tool to solving social problems. That the solving social problems was equally, if not more important than the idea of making a profit, which is a radical concept for many people. But it's business, and Paul Hawken stated this almost 30 years ago in Ecology of Commerce, that business can be the most effective tool for solving social problems, and it's the fastest moving sector of society. Unfortunately, we live in an age where that has kind of fallen off, and I think that's the rise of social entrepreneurship, because business is so focused on profits, not only profits, but short-term profits, just in the next quarter, that not thinking long-term. So we're lucky to have these kind of folks up here, panelists who are really engaging in ways to, serve other than the bottom line. Which leads to our next question and our next topic, which are, what are the risks and benefits of starting a B Corp? And, you might want to preface it by saying, what is a B Corp to you? And how do they compare to traditional corporations? So I'm going to go with we have two professors, but the professor of sustainability here, Shauna, who's doing her dissertation on this very topic.
Thank you. Since so many people do know what a B Corp is, I won't spend much time on that, but I will share the story of how I became one of the first in Hawaii. I had a consulting firm I was starting, and there was endless debate whether we should be a nonprofit or a business. And as we dove deeper and deeper, we realized that we wanted to have the mission and transparency of a nonprofit, but the agility to actually get things done of a business. And so we discovered B Corp. And going through the certification process was really exciting, because all of the things that we valued so much were in the questionnaire. So things there's 4 major areas: governance, environmental impact, community impact, and worker impact. And we realized that if you were able to actually check off a number of these items in these categories, you were getting yourself beyond greenwashing. You're really separating yourself in the market as a company that's walking the talk. And that was the main reason we started to do it. And then I realized that there was hundreds of other B Corps internationally in like 60 countries, and that's when it became a dissertation topic. And fast forward a year or two later, and I've interviewed 50 founders of B Corps around the world, including many companies you know, and I keep hearing similar things about the value and benefits of becoming a B Corp and the risk. So the risk is that you put in your articles of incorporation that you're going to treat the community, your workers, and the environment like a shareholder. And so you're really going to be accountable to them in your operating model. You're legally liable to that, financially liable to that. That's the exposure, unless that's how you want to operate anyways, which a lot of these companies do and want to. And that's how we wanted to operate as well. So when I asked them what was the benefit that you found, I often heard the differentiation in the marketplace, of course, separating yourself out. And then I heard really surprising things, like we attract the best of the millennials. I kept hearing this over and over again. There's a section of the millennials that are really civic-minded and want to really commit to a company that's going to treat them great so that they can learn and grow and apply themselves to their fullest, and that they're attracted to B Corps. So that was one that came up. General employee retention during hard times, that the employees were willing to take pay cuts and do whatever it took to keep the company going. They're very, very loyal. And then customer loyalty as well. In tough times, people are willing to stay with that company. And when I said things like, what would success look like for the B Corp movement, they said everyone would be a B Corp. And I said, well, then you couldn't differentiate yourself in the market. Everyone's doing it as well and green and caring as you are. And they said, we want to differentiate on other things. So I thought that was one of the most powerful things I learned.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because sometimes it seems pie in the sky, but after my discussions with Shauna, to have these B Corps, it seems like, oh yeah, that would be a good idea, but we have to be realistic. But during the recession, she said, some of these B Corps were 65% more likely to survive, and did survive the recession than traditional businesses, which shows that, that loyalty from your customers and your employees who are willing to take pay cuts instead of forcing them upon them because they're part of the company. It's fascinating. I look forward to reading her dissertation, which is coming up.
I'm holding you to that.
Yeah, I bet. No one looks forward to finishing that more than Shauna. And as someone who works in a B Corp, I think I'm going to turn to whom I call the ultimate styrophobe, because he's an ultimate Frisbee player and he runs a company called Styrophobia. My friend down here to tell us a little bit more about what is it like, Ari, to work for a B Corp, and how is it different from other organizations, other businesses?
Well, I really hope that everybody gets to work for a B corporation, and I think that B corporations are the wave of a future that will come soon. I believe that you're going to go and you're going to buy sneakers one day, and you're going to not have a choice of Nike and Adidas, but you're going to have a choice of B corporation or B corporation 2, and that people are going to be competing for levels of quote-unquote sustainability. I work for a company called World Centric, and I believe that one of the major differentiating factors for a B corporation is impact. It is maximizing your impact by getting your products and your services out to as many people as possible, but at the same time minimizing your carbon footprint, minimizing the resources that you consume. And that's a really interesting thing. I mean, we just had a retreat, and the entire company got together in one place, and the major topic of conversation for this entire company was our impact projects. The owner of this company has allowed us to take time off from work. We get paid to actually work on social projects, community-based projects, whether it be a garden, a beach cleanup. We have a group that's going in just to set up legislation, to go all across the nation to work on different pieces of legislation and make cookie-cutter packets so that somebody, a grassroots individual in that town or in that state, can go ahead and have a very easy way to introduce, say, a bill on banning styrofoam, which Stuart mentioned that we actually had an introduction in the City Council today. The sense of community and purpose changes. And he spoke about loyalty and the notion of being able to weather any storm. When you are founded in the community and you have all of these social elements to how you operate, nobody wants to see you go. And it's just a wonderful thing. I mean, it sounds all kumbaya, but we're also functioning at a very high level. World Centric is a $30 million company, and that's saying a lot when your products cost 4 cents a piece. You can be very successful, and I think that the notion of what are the risks associated with a B Corp, I think that we have crossed a threshold where sustainability and social responsibility and environmental awareness has gotten to a point where people aren't going to accept businesses that aren't aware of their impacts, their negative impacts. And so being a B corporation, any downside you might see to the rigor or the evaluation and the certification are actually pluses and are going to gain you in business. I mean, it's really just the wave of the future. It's a first step in the evolution of our economy.
Yeah, well said. And I think, kind of building on both what Shauna and Ari said, is that I think we're coming to an age where we're seeing the ways of doing business, whether it's a nonprofit or as a for-profit, are kind of outmoded, and that nonprofits have to become a little bit more like businesses. Having worked with nonprofits for most of my life, they need to have more of a business model, and they can't just depend on handouts and grants. They need to, figure out ways to make money. And then on the other hand, so they're not just mission driven, companies need to be, the single bottom line is not enough anymore. Why would any company get tax benefits and breaks for not caring about the environment or social problems, and when you only have one bottom line of making money? Whereas now 20 states have B Corps, including Delaware, and this is a trend that's happening. Now these are giving back to the community. They deserve tax breaks, and so that's something that we hope will come down the line, because they are good neighbors. We want them in our communities. So any other thoughts on B Corps? We can continue to touch on these. We're kind of going through these questions a little bit fast because we want to leave time for you all to ask questions at the end. So if you can jot down questions and think about if you want to ask a particular person or if you want just the panel, we can do those at the end. We'll have about 15 minutes. All right, so our third topic is how are social entrepreneurs, B Corps, and what we call the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits going to change the way we do business in Hawaii? And can you see any new trends emerging in the business world based on this triple bottom line model? And I think for this question, I'll start with Kainoa Casco, who I refer to as a Maui boy, no ko'oi. Very proud, was working on the mainland and went to school and was doing work with buildings and LEED certification and really wanted to bring back these ideas to Hawaii. It was part of his passion and drive to bring it home and make it local. So Kainoa.
Thanks, Stuart. I like the nickname, by the way. Yeah, so I grew up on Maui and Lahaina. It is very different than it was now, but one thing that we kind of took for granted was the values you grew up with in Hawaii, connecting to the environment, being part of the community, everything that we're talking about here. And so how that translates into how you manage your business and create a business model is where the gap lies. And it wasn't until I went to Portland, Oregon, how Stuart was mentioning, where I really learned how making profits and creating business value and creating positive social, environmental, cultural impacts, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And it took me, so I made it my mission to come back to Hawaii and help Hawaii businesses and organizations build that bridge. So, one of the biggest things that I found, I was in Portland and San Francisco, and I've done projects in Utah, Alaska, Maine, is, how to help people realize the importance of the environment and of social causes and of culture is really difficult when in Hawaii, on the mainland, not really difficult, but more difficult than in Hawaii, where it's sort of intuitive for people here, or people that are attracted to Hawaii, really connect with that way of thinking, way of being. And so, that's what B Corps really do, and social entrepreneurship. It helps bridge the gap between your values and operating a for-profit or a non-profit business and a successful business model. And for trends, I would say, a lot of non-profits are now being held more accountable for accounting for their impacts of their, for their funders. Their funders are asking them, show us how you're measuring your performance and impacts for what, for the money we gave you. And so there's more accountability on the nonprofit end, and even on the for-profit end. There's triple bottom line reporting. There's the EU Parliament just are requiring all the corporations to do sustainability reporting. 2/3 of S&P 500 companies do triple bottom line reporting. And CalPERS is requiring, or is looking at the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board for people in their portfolio, so they can report on all these impacts, such as what B Corp is all about. So Hawaii has a real good opportunity to be a leader in the nation because we have the values. It's just a matter of showing people the way to bridge the gap between their values and operating and managing their business.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Kainoa, when we were originally talking for the magazine article, talked about how we've heard of this triple bottom line of people, planet, and prosperity. I like the word prosperity better than profit, because prosperity is more encompassing, and it means more than just a monetary value, as does the word wealth. The original etymology of the word wealth means well-being. Now tell me how far we've gotten away from that original meaning with our modern economy. But he talked about, along with this triple bottom line, there's a fourth ingredient, and that's culture. And I really like that idea because that makes it local. That encompasses the arts, spirituality, people's moral beliefs, because how we do business reflects our values, right? It's not just the laws on the books. It's what we value, what we want to contribute. And B Corps really allow people to do that, and so does social entrepreneurship in general. So it's very exciting. Other people want to talk about B Corps. I'd love to hear more examples of emerging trends and specific examples of what's going on in Hawaii. Ari is leaning towards the microphone.
Well, I think that there is a general trend that's happening, and Hawaii obviously is based on a tourism economy, and I think that the businesses that are placing establishments, all the new developments, and they're being scrutinized a little bit more about what materials they're using to build that building with, or are they going to provide bike lockups, which never really was even on the agenda for most of these corporations. And so I think that's a huge shift in the way we're looking at things. I can't say it's perfect now. And I do want to point out one thing about B corporations, and I alluded to it being the first step in a very important evolutionary process. And although I do think that B Corps are fabulous, I do want to point out that for the most part, B Corps are just less bad. So, and that may be confusing, and maybe we can unpack that a little bit more, but when you can be a sustainable you can be as sustainable as possible, but still have a negative impact. And actually, the company that I work for is a prime example. We manufacture disposable utensils and plates, and sure, they're certified compostable, and there's no toxins in them or anything like that. But at the end of the day, you're still throwing it away. And even if it does go to the ideal place, a composting facility, and it does make soil, it's still a lot of energy that goes into a product. And so the thing that separates World-Centric from many of the other corporations out there is that we want you to put us out of business. And I think that that is a fundamental difference from some of the social entrepreneurships and the B corporations that are out there, with the notion that we're doing this because the economy, the education is such a slow process that we can't just go and say, hey, everybody stop using disposables and start bringing your own container, your own fork, because that's not going to happen overnight. But what can happen is we can say, hey, by the way, there's this green alternative, and we can function and then have enough money to go ahead and do advertisement and awareness. We just put out a huge campaign that says, do you really need that straw? We manufacture straws, but at the end of this huge campaign, the alternatives that we do to a straw, that we represent for a straw, aren't our product. And so I think that's a huge difference. And so as you're going to be manufacturing a product, and if it's a service, maybe it's a slightly different story, but particularly with products, if you're manufacturing a product that you want people to buy more of, and we're still measuring success by GDP, then you wind up in a kind of funny place. Yes, B corporations are a great step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned, but the example of our company, I'd love to go out of business, and that's an unusual thing that you might hear represented from a company.
Oh, that's more than unusual, my friend. I doubt they're going to put that on their business cards.
Actually, at the retreat, we discussed this. The notion of actually having an ad campaign for World-Centric saying, please put us out of business.
Yes, and another famous B Corp that just switched is Yvon Chouinard at Patagonia. And if anybody's seen the advertising campaign, they have one that says, do you really need this T-shirt, or do you really need this product? It's also brilliant because people are like, yes, now I want it more than ever, because we're twisted like that as consumers. But it is very kind of interesting and exciting to see such a different take on business, and that we are definitely in this transitional period. And so, any other further comments before we turn it to the audience about B Corps? Scott?
I'll just do a quick one. So the class I teach is all about the business case for sustainability. That's the MBA course that I teach, and Shauna was actually one of my students 2 years ago. One of my prize pupils. And the idea so we do a 3-hour lecture once a week for the 15 weeks of the semester, and every week we cover a different topic about why sustainability should be integrated into the DNA of the company and how it benefits the company in terms of the bottom line anyway. Right? So you're doing all these good things, et cetera, but how does it financially come back to the company? And that's what most in the business school, that's what they wanted to hear. So all of the things that we cover end up being in the B Corp checklist, right? And I think you found that going through it. Effectively, we were talking about how does it benefit a company to be sustainable? Well, it benefits in that you get the better people, you get better recruitment, you get better applicants for your jobs. Cool, that's great. How else does it benefit? Well, you get better retention. People don't quit as much. They work harder, they're more productive, they care about what they're doing, they want to see the company succeed. And what value does that have? Well, there's economists out there that actually measure those things, and the value is clear, and it pays for itself. And so these initiatives, the B Corp kind of thing, as Ari said, it basically gets you ahead of that curve. If you do the B Corp stuff, and you get all that stuff in writing, and you figure those things out, and you integrate it into the DNA of the company, going forward, all of those things will be there when all of those benefits are waiting to happen, and they will happen. So.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And when you ask as these develop, because remember, we're at the cutting edge. These are just starting, to develop here in Hawaii and across the country. But when it comes down to customer loyalty and to employees, where they're going to want to work and where customers are going to want to buy their products, they're going to have a competitive advantage. The longer this takes hold and the more they get into the community and they know them that, oh, this company gives back to us, we've got to support them. This is going to be a wave that's going to be very hard to stop. So it's a very exciting, I think, development in the business world, and this fusion of kind of the nonprofit mission with the business world ideas. So what we want to do now is kind of open it up to questions. If you can do me a favor and just raise your hand, and I'll try to get to several people as their hands went up. Sorry. So I'm going to start with you, and then I'll go to you. And if you could speak loudly.
Yeah. Question for Scott. Not just only on the B Corp. How does that also impact the company or a startup in its valuation to raise equity? And how does the big money look down to the B Corps to cycle it up? Because aren't there certain pension funds that sometimes say we need to look at a certain type of investments, et cetera? So that's really my question.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things I was thinking about putting out as an example, is the ability to attract capital. When you're talking the big money stuff, I'm not going to talk about IPOs and that sort of thing, but when you're talking about startups, you're talking typically anything from your own money, friends and family money, crowdfunding money, angel investors, things like the Clean Tech Incubator here, the Energy Accelerator, that sort of thing is what really gets companies started. And more these days, that money is interested in sustainability. And that trend is incredibly clear, and the data is incredibly clear on that. There's more and more impact investors wanting to do impact investing. It's gone so mainstream that like Solomon Smith Barney offers impact investing portfolios. And so if you have a portfolio with them, you can shift all your money into a triple bottom line package. And that, of course, obviously helps a lot of us get off the ground, for sure.
Yeah, and in the alternate path, you have movements across the country now. When Bill McKibben spoke at University of Hawaii during Earth Day, you have divestment campaigns going on as well, where people are saying, these big oil companies, what really do they contribute besides commercials every 30 seconds on our, while we're watching TV? And so there are universities, there are groups across the country, and there are even investment houses that are starting to do divestment campaigns because people are demanding it. So you see the push for something more positive, and then the withdrawal also from ones that are not. So I think that's an interesting. Did you want to add to that about kind of B Corps and their sustainability?
I was going to say, I heard an economics professor at the university saying the absolute worst thing a company could do would be become a B Corp because no one would ever invest in them. And this was a very limited way of thinking. And I researched after that and found that 10% of the capital in the U.S. is for impact investing. And this was a couple years ago, so I can only imagine that's grown. When I sat down with I guess, grant writers and different people, when they find out we're a B Corp, we actually have doors open for us that could have never opened before. And we have funding sources that would never look at a nonprofit, set a precedent for us, and vice versa. So I feel like we've gotten into places that no one ever has gone before because of our unique role as a B Corp.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is Shauna was telling me in her research and interviewing all these B Corps, she found that there was really an emphasis on cooperation over cutthroat competition, and that they would help each other. Which I think is fascinating because it's the whole rising tide lifts all boats, and it doesn't have to be this cutthroat mentality, and that they can help each other survive. Yes,
add
please.
one more thing to that too. I think I don't want to play devil's advocate here. However, I think that there's also a correlation thing that we're seeing going on. So I think the B Corp thing signals an attention to values that can also be signaled in other ways. And so I don't think the impact money necessarily, I at least in my discussions with angels and people with money, they rarely are asking the question right now of whether you're a B Corp. Usually it's they want to see things that they're pretty familiar with, and if they if they're familiar with B Corps, that's fine. They'll go ahead and I think move forward with the B Corp the same way they would in other corporate structures. But I think in general, corporate structure is not an investable decision by an angel. Usually what we're seeing is, team, business model, traction. Like, these are the things that people really care about when they're making investment decisions, and they probably don't make investment decisions based on corporate structure. I think some exceptions may be when you can get into places that otherwise that color of money would not look at you because you're a B Corp. So that might actually be a change. But I think where it does really help is in the alignment, because I think there's a correlative effect between companies that want to make impact, whether or not they're a B Corp, and companies that are aligned with impact investors.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just add one more thing too. One of the top things when I interviewed people, they said was a benefit of being a B Corp was the international network that they then connected into. So this business to business support. So if I'm starting a food company that does a certain type of thing here in Hawaii and I'm starting from scratch, I can connect with the dozens other that are in the US and then the other dozen that's international. And they'll want to talk to me because I'm a B Corp. It's like you're in the club, as odd as that sounds. But it's a really supportive, really well-connected, really experienced club that knows what you're doing and has probably done it longer than you have or could give you some kind of insight. So that business-to-business network is one of the biggest things that came up in terms of a benefit, and that has all sorts of indirect support besides just direct investors.
Yeah, and Shauna will be teaching some of you the secret handshake after the panel discussion today. So there was a question here.
First of all, my name is Stacy. Thank you all for your presentations. They're spot on. I'd love to hear. I actually been working overseas for the last 25 years on development projects with USAID and banks and things like that. I'm a coastal resource management working with communities and livelihoods. So you can imagine what all of that means to me and what you're trying to do. And the biggest question that comes right down to exactly what you were saying is that I just helped design a $100 million project that's supposed to be bringing infrastructure and livelihoods down to communities, and they want B Corps. And they can't find those incubators. And so we actually designed this incubator that doesn't have partners yet. So I'd love to chat with some of you guys about that and just talk without overstressing your time to help to connect to some of that network, to replicate it in some of these places, because there's tons of funding now with Jeff and everything else for these. So that's the first, and so let's chat. And in particular for you, coconut biofuel is a big issue in Fiji and is a big issue in some other places. And I'm actually looking for my own social thing to get into, maybe becoming an agent of that. So I'd love to see what you know about that and what you think about coconut biofuel. Maybe not for Hawaii, we've lost most of our coconut trees, but certainly in some of these archipelagic countries I work in, that's a big issue. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, not directly about coconut biofuel, and we can talk about it offline too, but just real briefly on the biofuel side, we've supported a number of biofuel companies, both Pacific Biodiesel and their plant on the Big Island, and then a feedstock company, most recently Terviva, that has Pangamia, which is an oil seed as well. So I think in general we're interested in oil feedstocks. The cost is a huge issue. So we take a really hard look at numbers on biofuels. We can talk in more detail about it.
And we have the queen of biofuels back here, Kelly King. Did you?
Sure, this might be an opportunity to differentiate between a B Corp certification, which is a checklist and putting some language into your operating agreement and submitting that to B Lab and doing a 2 or 3 hour interview with them. B Lab is the nonprofit that runs B Corp. So that's a certification. Then there's the legal designation of, in Hawaii, it's SBC, Sustainable Business Corporation, and that's what Stuart was referring to, there being 20 states that have passed this type of legislation. In Hawaii, if you're an LLC, you cannot get that designation, so I didn't do that. But if you're a corporation, you can, and that entails having a third-party certification, which could be B Corp or DBEDS, Green Business Checklist, or some third party, and putting a third-party reviewed report up on your website or some public place and submitting that legally. So 2 different things. They both have some legal component to it because you're changing your articles of incorporation in either case. But should there be an IRS designation, that goes along with this, that B Corps get tax benefits, you're going to have to do that extra layer of going the route of the SBC. I hope that helps.
Yeah. All right. Yes, let's get in some of the other panelists involved.
Sure. Thank you again, everyone. I was part of Social Entrepreneurship Anonymous. Glad that there are folks out here that we can finally talk to. There's a lot of pressure to outside, always about bottom line. My background's mainly in solar, but I go to DC a lot, and that's what you hear. You're in the mainland, DC, Silicon Valley. You hear a lot about the bottom line, the key question in every pitch, every investment interview is how you make money, right? And but I'm really glad to hear the initiative that's happening here. I think the ethos itself in Hawaii is evolving away from just tourism. I think it's about attracting a lot of people, talent, and retaining talent here as well. And I would love to ask the social entrepreneurship part for you folks. Dawn, maybe I could ask you. There's a story for you guys where Energy Accelerator almost didn't happen, and there were some struggles. And I just wanted to ask, maybe for yourself and the rest of the panel, what kept you guys going?
Well, hello, bottom line. I mean, this is the dirty secret, right? If you don't make money, you don't have any employees to benefit. I mean, so this is the most important question with any company that comes to the Energy Accelerator. How are you going to make money? Because I think ultimately we want companies to impact clean energy space. You cannot scale if you do not make money. If you're losing money, like, you can't scale and you can't be impactful. And the same thing is true for the Energy Accelerator. So for us, it constituted a really major pivot around how we fund companies and work with companies, and we're still evolving on our business model. So I think, as an example, like 3.5 years ago, we had one revenue stream. Now we have 12 revenue streams. So it's about being really creative, being entrepreneurial, and trying to understand what your value is to many different potential parties and how to sell and monetize that. And we're a nonprofit, so we're part of a Pacific International Center for High-Tech Research. So we're a nonprofit, but I think we operate like a startup in almost every way, and it really is about securing the bottom line.
Yeah, and again, that's like, a nonprofit acting more like a business and recruiting businesses to have more of a mission, act like nonprofits. I saw a question in the back, and we'll probably have only time for one more, so we'll finish with yours after yours.
I have this question for all the panelists. I would say that we have, what I gather, about 75% of our infrastructure is fairly aged. And, there's definitely a lot of opportunities to retrofit. What technologies and what opportunities have you guys seen out there that are addressing those issues? Is it ESPCs? Is it ESCOs? Is it energy auditing? Like, what opportunities are there that are adding to the sustainability mix that we
Scott, Kainoa, anybody?
Are you looking for a business idea for yourself? Is that sort of?
No, I mean, we see a lot of PV, we see a lot of wind, and that's typically the focus. But that's, if you look at our energy goals, that's only 30%. We have to achieve, where's the other 40%? Where is that coming from? And, you guys being experts in sustainability, and us being, being in the business too as well, what's behind the veil? What other things are being done besides that?
I'll take a first crack at it. I think the bottom line is that we're the most unsustainable state in the country, hands down. Yeah, it's great. We banned plastic bags. That's awesome. And cigarette butts on the beach is great. We are really up a creek in so many ways. And I think what that is you can look at it as apocalypse, or you can look at it optimistically. And you can call yourself an apocalyptimist. So that's the path that I choose, and I think what that does as a business person who thinks about these things creates unbelievable opportunities in so many ways. So we import all our food, we import all of our energy. What do we do with our trash, right? So we have many people who are solving that problem, but there's so much more that needs to be done. I would say talk to people who work in the field, and we all have ideas. If you look at there's a great chart that I show in my class that is the percentage of vegetables eaten here, fresh produce that's eaten here, versus what's grown here. And 20 years ago, it was about 40% or something along those lines, and then the imports just kind of shot up like that. I think if you create local food, there will be a market for it. It's so straightforward. So look into aquaponics, look into small-scale production of things that people can put in their mouth and eat. And then I think the other big thing is that don't fight a system, right? A lot of times I tell people, if you're not catering to military or tourism here on island, what are you trying to do, right? The money is just raining on our heads through those two venues. So do some ecotourism stuff. Take tourists and do something cool with them that is sustainable. And there's many companies doing stuff like that. And there's piles of money out there. Same thing with the military. There's piles of money coming in here from military stuff. Figure out some solution for them that's sustainable, and believe me, there's a billion. And you've got yourself an idea.
And I was going to move to the next question, but
I mean, just real quickly, I mean, you mentioned infrastructure. The notion of infrastructure here, and the fact that we're importing somewhere between 95 and 97% of what we're consuming here, if you're looking for a sustainable practice, anything that's closed loop, whether it be waste management or growing food or making energy, anything that's closed loop is huge here. And that should be the focus of anybody trying to start a company or figure out how you're going to reduce our impact here.
And after, you can talk to Scott and Ari and other apocalyptimists who are forming a little group, support group afterwards. So we'll finish with this question here, and go ahead.
This is for Kainoa. So in terms of the LEED certification process, how is that happening, like on the mainland? Is that common? How are we doing in comparison to the mainland? And then internationally, is the U.S. behind the international trend?
Good question. I'm not really a lead. I'm a lead AP. I've been on lead projects, but I've been out of that game for a little bit now, focusing on more corporate and organizational level sustainability. So it would be hard for me to quote current trends on that right now. But I can speak to the kind of organizational level sustainability and where the Hawaii market is relative to that, if that's all right. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was in Portland and San Francisco, and I've worked on sustainability projects for banks and tech companies, and a utility, just small ones here and there. And the integration of sustainability into their planning and accounting and reporting and operations is pretty far ahead of where Hawaii is right now. It's actually really far ahead. There's very little sustainability reporting going on here. There's very little people asking what are our impacts because of our business model or operations, whether triple bottom line or quadruple. How do we integrate, once you understand those impacts, how do we integrate those into our business model, into our accounting, into our planning? People aren't really asking those questions yet here, when on the mainland, a lot of corporations, whether it's because of shareholder activism or regulation or cost savings or market positioning, whatever the reasons are, it's happening a lot more on the mainland. And I similar to LEED or B Corps now coming on, so the more activity going on in this space around B Corp, social entrepreneurship, corporate responsibility, I think Hawaii will get there once it starts catching on, because of Hawaii's real relational and it's a small market and you can notice changes a lot easier, that organizations and bigger companies will start jumping on, because the values are here, like I was talking about earlier. So it's just a matter of them understanding how to get there, like it is on the mainland or in Europe or wherever it is.
And part of it's based on demand. In the build out of Kakako, which is basically a high-rise tower going up every other week. They need to demand, and they have. Some of those are going to be LEED certified. And that's something that community can really rally together. Say, if you're going to build this many, and you're going to do it in our neighborhood, we need to make sure that you're LEED certified, that has it. And it's the same with business. We need to demand these things. We'll have time to talk with each of our panelists afterwards. I promised them all a drink as part of their payment for being on this panel. But I wanted to end with a quote by Robert Kennedy, which he made in 1968. And it really, really struck me because we always talk about the bottom line, even in conversations, like, okay, what's the bottom line? And he had this great quote about gross national product, our GDP. Gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the equality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. It's a pretty profound quote, and you think about, here's a new way of doing business that's just emerging. And you people in this room, these people on this panel, and you all have an opportunity to really start spreading the word. And if you know somebody who, because you're all innovators and entrepreneurs in here, let's really push this thing. This could be one of the best things with Hawaii, because the values that are already instilled in that are part of Hawaii already, as Kainoa said. These are values that we really emphasize in the environment and the health of our people. So with that, I really want to thank you for coming. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. They did an awesome job today. And thank you all. And Kevin is going to be the Pied Piper and lead us to our destination for the reception afterwards. Yeah. But stay around, come to the reception, and we can talk more about this. Thank you all.
You too. Yeah. Try it. Yeah, thanks for having us. A lot of smart people up there. I was like, oh, you put me up with these guys?
Yeah, I meant to mention, I didn't see your text, but I meant to mention interview.
He says, well, could it be too difficult for us? And I said, what's it matter if no one's on the chart yet? You know, let's do it, let's research it. You know, day to day,
So you have to be.
and so, but we've also become partners with other so based on what we do, we're doing corporations.
I don't know much about that side of it, the B Corp side.
So what we're looking at is certification as a serious act.
These two guys, it would be Kainoa and Shauna would be the best people to talk to about that. I mean, honestly, they've got the most experience with it, and they can help guide through the process.
I don't know much about the B Corp side, but I'm the
Yeah, but that would be a fantastic
partnership.
one. It kind of gives you theirs.
On the ground floor.
Yeah, on the ground floor.
Why don't you say you know.
Just, oh, it's off. It's all right.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that for some time. It's not the